What's up, you radical human? Welcome back. Today, I sat down with Kettle Fire Bone Broth founder Nick Mers. And we talked about what his aha moment was for bone broth, how he became a very successful college dropout and started a multi-million-dollar bone broth business with his brother after a knee injury, of all things, that kicked him onto this path. And then what that's been like, to really establish a regenerative supply chain to support farmers doing it right. And what he learned in the process was wanting to validate what was in their product and also what wasn't in it, things like microplastics and heavy metals, that he wanted to do some testing. The testing didn't really exist, so he started his own testing company called Light Labs. And he's learned a lot of the chicanery that goes on in the testing industry for supplements, in particular the Wild West, like the loopholes, the things that people can say are in the product that are not actually there. Is your creatine gummy just really an expensive Haribo, and all manner of other things. Really fun, very insightful conversation if you care about what's in your food and where it comes from, and learn a thing or two about bone broth along the way. So let's get into it with Nick Mers. Nick, what was your big aha moment for bone broth? Tell me the story.
Man. So the background there is I was graduating high school. I knew I didn't want to go to college. And so was actively looking for, call it some side hustles that I could invest my time in. And bone broth was one of them, where my older brother, I suffered a knee injury senior year of high school, tore everything in my knee but the ACL.
Ooh.
And required reconstructive knee surgery, was on crutches for 9 months. And my older brother, Justin, who I also am co-founder with, he was getting into paleo. And at the time, bone broth was on the up and up. In 2014, paleo wasn't this massive community either. Mm-hmm. And so it was kind of a niche within a niche. And he said, you should look into bone broth. And the tipping point was Kobe Bryant suffered the Achilles heel injury. And there was an article on ESPN about his chef would travel with him everywhere he went to make bone broth to help aid in the recovery process. So good enough for Kobe, figured it was good enough for me. Yep. And when I looked at buying bone broth, there were not a ton of options when it came to, call it convenience. And all of them were frozen, required 2-day shipping with dry ice. And the thought was making your bone broth is a hassle. Currently buying it is a hassle. If you could deliver bone broth in like a shelf-stable format, make it hassle-free, you could probably build a decently sized business. Yeah. Back then, we kind of identified decently sized as, maybe $250 million, $500,000 a year. Mm-hmm. And we jumped in, launched the first like true grass-fed shelf-stable bone broth. And fortunately for us, we got the trend right where ended up being much, much bigger than we ever could have anticipated.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
I've heard you say you thought you were like going to start this cool little family side hustle business and turned into something, you probably couldn't even imagine. How much of the family is involved in this? Was it just you and a brother, or was it a couple of you?
So I actually have 5 brothers, 1 sister.
Okay.
So
big fam.
Yeah. Too many siblings to get involved.
Yeah.
But it's just Justin and I at Kettle Fire.
Okay.
Yeah.
You said something interesting too. I'm just curious to pull on that thread a little bit. You were graduating high school and you knew you didn't want to go to college. How come? That's usually just the trajectory, right, that people do. What was different for you?
So I think for me, my older brother was attempting to start companies when he was in college. And he started a company, ended up failing, but through the process, he became incredibly well networked and found a job through someone who respected his hustle, respected his work ethic, and then brought him into the fold. And so it was kind of this aha moment of, even through failure, he still found great success and didn't love school, didn't have great grades. And when I was weighing the options of going to university, I'm not going to say wasting 4 years. I just know exactly how I would have spent those 4 years.
Yeah.
Where the alternative was start a company. Downside is I go to college. Right. The upside is I actually start a business, learn incredible hard and soft skills that can translate to future job opportunities. And I just looked at, it would give me an X factor over any other recent college graduate if I actually just took a shot on something.
Yeah.
And so that was the rationale. And I think thankfully it worked out, but playing out the scenario of if Kettle Fire did not become what it did, I still would have been very happy with the decision.
Yeah.
You go to college, you're a year, 2 years behind at worst. There's probably a little hit to the ego and pride, but beyond that, I just kind of thought there was cap downside, unlimited upside.
I like that perspective, man. That's refreshing. And it's cool that you had a little bit of a role model to steer your thinking in that way.
Yeah.
But I've always thought, especially if you do have maybe more of an entrepreneurial mindset and you know you want to try and do your own thing, it doesn't make that much sense to go to college to do business,
Correct.
to learn about like the theory of business when you could just do business. Correct. Not as an education, but actually like do the business thing. And so many business professors, they've never ran businesses.
Agreed.
So it's all theory and like very little application, right? And then actually you're like, I'm not going to do the uni thing. I'm just going to do the actual thing itself. Yeah. And, you know, thankfully it paid off, which is awesome. But like you said, even if it didn't, you would have just pivoted, and because that's just a mindset thing, right?
Right. And I just think you'd start surrounding yourselves with like-minded individuals who are also throwing themselves into the entrepreneurial journey. And I just think it's, you know, a lot of my friends that I made at the time were starting their own companies. Not all of them were a success, but just the shared learnings that you have amongst a close group of individuals, all doing something incredibly difficult, was incredibly rewarding. And so for me, that was just kind of my university experience.
Yeah, right. And it's real world education, man.
Yeah.
I think I might butcher the statistic, but statistically speaking, most businesses, most entrepreneurial ventures fail. It might be upwards of like 90%. So like 10% are successful. You know, knowing what you know now and obviously having different irons in the fire, what do you think sets those 10% apart that can potentially win versus the 90% that don't make it?
It's a great question. I mean, I think some out of the box cliche answers are, you know, those who persevere long enough are just able to sustain a higher level of pain over a very long period of time. But even then, I just don't think that's true, because you can work incredibly hard, incredibly long on a very bad idea
on the
that
wrong
never
thing.
takes off.
Right.
And I think what I realized is, I think Brad Jacobs is the one that said this, but it's like you can do or get a lot of things wrong if you get the trend right. And so for us, of course, first time starting a company, we got a ton of things wrong. And there are so many points where we almost failed. And thankfully we got the trend right. And when you get the trend right, you get a lot wrong, you can still experience healthy year-over-year growth, strong signals, which allow you to raise more money, allow you to hire a better team. And so for us, at least, Kettle Fire, it was all about getting the trend right. And I think that if I had to place a bet, it would be a bet on the trend backed by hungry entrepreneur, less so just like an entrepreneur willing to run through walls, because I just don't think that necessarily ends up in a success. Probably increases the likelihood,
right?
But I don't think that's like enough of a reason where you're going to fall in the 10% versus the 90%.
For sure, yeah, for sure. Like perseverance and, you know, an immutable will to just keep going is very healthy skill. But what's the idea that it's more important the direction than the speed? Yeah, you can go really fast and really hard in the wrong direction.
Correct.
And it's cool, yeah, you're going fast and hard, but it's over here, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, point your boat at the right thing. I think that's interesting. What early challenges did you face, like personally, or the many challenges that Kettle Fire faced?
Yeah, so early on, I think one would just definitely be more pride and ego, where small town in Pennsylvania, Schwenksville, not going to university I was the only one that graduated my high school class and didn't go to college. And I remember telling some people I was going to start a bone broth company, and the feedback to me was, like, kid, you're better off starting a car wash company. It's like, you are going to waste a lot of time. And so I think it was just kind of the like self-belief required to just kind of continue down that path. And in order to get it off the ground, I mean, we had to find a manufacturer that was willing to make bone broth, which is an incredibly time-consuming process. B, we are USDA regulated, and so that already eliminates a healthy number of manufacturers here in the States. And then the third was taking a bet on an 18-year-old.
Yeah,
He's going to actually build a business, pay the bills on time. We had to pay up front for the first 3, but then beyond that, pay the bills. And so I called, no lie, 600 co-packers in the span of a couple of months. And the break that we actually got was I was reading Mark Cuban's book, How to Win at the Game of Business, I think. And in the front, it says, I love hearing from my readers. And so I was at the point where nothing to lose, all upside, shot him a note, said, here's what I've been working on. number of manufacturers I've called. Here are the obstacles we're running into. He responded in 15 minutes, connected me to his partner, who then connected us to the manufacturer that we've worked with for 10 years now.
No friggin' way.
Yeah.
Dude, that's incredible. That's really cool. And a nod to, you know, like you said, being on the right trend and also being persistent. Because I imagine as you're going through that, when did the doubts start to creep in after the first 100, 300,
Immediately.
400?
Yeah.
You're like, oh shit, we just got to keep going, I guess. Keep knocking.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and again, there's very much a world where it just did not work. And no amount of perseverance could have gotten us through to the right manufacturer. So that was an incredible break. But, you know, I just think perseverance expands the surface area of luck and opportunity.
For sure.
And so after enough calls, I was desperate. I was willing to do anything.
Yeah.
That's when you tend to get a little bit more creative.
That's cool. So that was a really cool little Hail Mary you pitched there, and it paid out. And I traveled a bunch in my youth, and one of the things the vendors on the side of the street in Asia used to always say to you when they were trying to sell you whatever they were trying to sell you, whether it was a deep fried scorpion or a new t-shirt that you didn't need, was never try, never know. Never try, never know. You never try, you never know. And here you are, like, I don't know, let me send this email and see what happens. There you go. Yeah.
And then from there, of course, that was the main challenge. And then when that got solved, you know, building a brand, building a company just introduces numbers of challenges that you would never anticipate. So
new levels, new devils, right?
Yeah.
I was reading an Alex Hormozy post this morning, and he said something along the line of, make something so good that it can't fail.
Yeah.
Like, you know, the example he used was like, you have a sandwich shop, just make it so good that when people take that first bite, they're like, holy shit, this is the best sandwich I've ever had. It can't not win in that scenario. And you were uniquely positioned and well-timed. Probably the first, like, I've been in the ancestral scene for a long time. You're really the first big bone broth brand, right? And it was almost, your product was too good not to succeed eventually, because it was doing the right stuff, right? You were actually giving a shit about how the cattle were raised, grass-fed and finished, regenerative farmers, organic, insert all of the buzzwords, like you were doing it right. How much of, because it didn't sound like you had a background in this necessarily, so how did you come to connect those dots early on that this was an important piece of the puzzle? I
mean, for us, we found out about it through the paleo community, and so we knew that's who we wanted to market to.
Yeah.
And so that kind of just naturally led us down the path of grass-fed, grass-finished, actually long cook times, don't cut corners, because these are going to be your customers. You cut corners, they're going to know. And so over time, of course, we then developed very strong convictions in why that was the right thing to do. But in the very beginning, it was a business decision.
Yeah.
But now it's like, there are so many reasons why you should build a supply chain, the like regenerative, grass-fed, grass-finished way. But that wasn't necessarily, one, regenerative wasn't really a thing back then.
No.
Two, grass-fed, grass-finished was kind of new, I want to say. I could be wrong there. But that's what we leaned into. And then thankfully over time, we just built the right product.
Yeah.
That people always thought bone broth would be a fad, right? Where it was paleo, bone broth within paleo, is that a fad? And then it was bone broth is great for like fasting, gut resets. And then it was add fat to your bone broth, the keto trend.
Yeah.
And now it's bone broth is great as a high protein, low calorie delivery mechanism. And so at the end of the day, I just think, you know, we built a great product that has benefited from a lot of these like fads, but bone broth has not been tied to a single one of them. And I think we've just realized it's an incredibly healthy, rich, versatile product that thankfully is scaled.
Yeah, for sure, man. And it's so interesting that people use terms like that it's just a fad and it will fizzle out when you think about bone broth's kind of history. And it's like a very ancestrally appropriate food. It's a foundational food. We've always had stocks and stews and, you know, you name it. So it's really cool to see that it wasn't a fad and it's standing the test of time. Our listeners are pretty well educated on this stuff. We're very bullish on the bone broth. But if you were to try and, you know, bone broth pillars in 60 seconds or less, what would you say about why it's so important to include as part of a healthy diet?
I mean, one, I just think it's an incredibly rich and nutritionally dense product, from protein, collagen, amino acids that you don't necessarily get in other foods. It's incredibly bioavailable as well. And for me, to be honest, it's 80 calories and 20 grams of protein.
Yeah, that's great.
So just drink a box a day and you're well on your way to the protein macros.
Yeah.
And so I just think it's such an easy, nutritious, low calorie way to add to any diet, eating, lifestyle, habits, etc. that is just net additive.
Love it. Yeah. And I think, we talk a lot about nutrition here and we help a lot of people. And I think one of still the biggest gaps that most people who are getting most of it right most of the time are missing is they're just still not leaning hard enough into the true nature of nose to tail.
Yeah.
Whether that be the organs, but I'm talking particularly about like the gelatinous connective tissues, the bone broths, all of that stuff. It's just like, and I think mostly for people, it's because it seems like a bit of a pain in the butt to make, so that's why, again, you exist, right? You provide convenience. And I think I've drank your product for years and years and years. So it's cool to put a face to a name, behind the brand and all of that stuff. But I really do think there is I can't see any scenario where more bone broth isn't better.
Right. I mean, if you want to consume the benefits of bone broth without drinking bone broth, it looks like eating cartilage.
Yeah.
It looks like roasting your own bone marrow or going to restaurants and overpaying to have them roast it for you. It's like when you cut the bone in half, you expose all that bone marrow, which gets cooked into the product. And so one of the most nutritionally rich things out there is just present and in large quantities in bone broth.
Yeah. I've been really enjoying recently making like an egg drop soup with bone broth. Just so good. Just heat the bone broth up just to that hot point, swirl it around, crack a couple of my backyard chicken eggs in there, and it's just so delicious, man. I love it, and I can't get enough. And I do think we should be doing more collagenous tissue maxing and bone broth. And you guys you're all over the place now, right? In most major stores. I don't know. It seems like I see a lot.
We're in 30,000 stores now.
Damn.
There's some key retailers we're about to go national with as well on the club side that we're super excited about. Yeah. So it continues to grow.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Speaking of like your influence on being an early adopter, if you will, of things like regenerative farming, supply chain, where's that at currently, and where do you see the future of regenerative farming, soil health, all of that fun stuff?
Yeah, so we launched a line of regenerative bone broths with the idea that we can commit purchasing volumes to these regenerative farmers, which then gives them a reason to expand operations.
Bingo, right.
And so I think, unfortunately, there needs to be demand. And our thinking was, if we can carve out a portion of our products that are regenerative specific, we can create demand. And then if we can actually point to the success of those products, we can start building case studies for how regenerative has allowed us to launch new products, win new customers, maybe even just win easy expansion within retailers. And you just need one or two of these successful case studies, I think, for more brands to do more of it. Yeah. I'm not saying that Kettle Fire is a leader in regenerative, because there are so many brands out there that are like purely regenerative focused and incredible brands. So it's been exciting to see just how quickly it seems like brands have taken to the idea of regenerative ag and working with regenerative suppliers.
Yeah, it's important, man. Yeah, and incentives obviously drive outcomes, and dangling the carrot for the fact that you're willing to show other farmers potentially that there is value in doing this in a world that probably is trying to pull them away from those practices, right? Oh, don't do all of that extra hard work. Just here's the whatever, and let's finish these cattle on corn, and here's 1,000 gallons of Monsanto's glyphosate. Go ham. So yeah, they've got to know that, like, and hopefully these people, obviously they tend to the land, they care about it deeply, but the incentives are all misaligned, it seems, for the most part.
100%. I mean, it is not easy to farm regeneratively.
No.
And there's a huge transition phase as well, where if you go from conventional or even organic farming to regenerative farming, I mean, you can expect yields to drop for 3 years, and these farmers don't have a lot of margin to accommodate the drops in revenue. And so, I mean, I have nothing but the utmost respect for the farmers that are just completely all in on regenerative, because in all honesty, it's almost like the wrong business decision now. I think incredibly smart, and will be more of the future the next 1, 3, 5 years down the road. So it just takes an incredible amount of guts.
It does, yeah.
to shift your supply chain regeneratively.
Yeah,
I should say for the farmers to, of course, farm regeneratively. And then I think it makes it much easier for these brands to, of course, opt into the supply chain.
Yeah, and I just think of like my little situation. I have a little homestead where I've got chickens and pigs and had goats, and we tried to do things with the highest intention, and that's super small scale, right? I'm just feeding my family. And it's hard. It's hard to, like, I have to go over to the Kentucky line to get my chicken feed, for example, to find something that's corn and soy free. I had to work with a pig nutritionist to get a pig feed that wasn't loaded with seed oils and corn and soy free. And, you know, I'm out there just a one-man show, like regeneratively moving the pigs' pastures and, you know, running the animals through. And I'm just like, I can't imagine what that's like with
Me neither.
thousands of heads of cattle or whatever it is.
No.
It's crazy, you know, but God bless them.
Yes, 100% correct.
Yeah, it's cool. You guys, what's interesting about your products, and it kind of stands out, is that it is in a carton. Was there any reason for the carton? Did you choose to go that direction?
So it really came down to the manufacturer that we worked with, where they had a existing infrastructure that we could lean into. Naturally, graduating from high school, don't have any money to my name. And so we had to lean into existing infrastructure.
Yeah.
And so that's why it ended up being in the carton. Over time, there are some issues with glass in terms of just supply chain at scale. It can become difficult. And once you get into retail with a certain pack type, to change is incredibly difficult. Retailers don't love it. Buyers don't love it. Your supply chain team doesn't love it. And so it very much was, again, we just wanted to make a hassle-free bone broth that was shelf stable. And this was the, one of 600 manufacturers that said yes. And so the decision was kind of made for us, but in all honesty, it's worked incredibly well.
Yeah, cool. Where did in this journey, the Light Labs equation start to creep in? Because, I assume somewhat of it is selfishly also wanting to know what's in your products and the other stuff that's on the market and things like that. So tell us a little bit about where that idea came from, what Light Labs is, and we'll go from there.
So the idea for Light Labs came about because Kettle Fire, one thing we wanted to do, where we built our own manufacturing so that we could have ultimate control over product quality, nutrient density. And so we wanted to articulate the message of what's in our product from actives, nutrient density, and then what's not in our product from a contaminants and toxin standpoint. And when we looked at the certifications, we weren't super happy with any of them out there. I think all of them it might be too broad of a statement, but I think most have loopholes that a lot of brands can exploit. And then you have a ton of brands with the same certifications, but huge differences in product quality. And so for us, we were kind of thinking about it, and it boiled down to lab testing and lab data is the ultimate source of truth. There's no way to spin it. And so we went down the path of testing our product for everything. And the process and journey of working with these labs to test all of our products, spending 6 figures to get this done, was the most hair-pulling, frustrating process ever. And it kind of hit me that I just don't believe a future exists where there's less testing, simply because more regulations, and then also consumers are not going to care less about what they're feeding themselves and their families. And quite frankly, the toxicity problem is only going to become more and more pronounced. And so I realized that there is a big opportunity to build a modern day lab that could eliminate the pain points associated with lab testing, where today you are manually filling in a PDF or an Excel spreadsheet. If I want to order 100 tests, there's 100 line items that I have to fill out. Then ship that in with my sample. The sample enters this black box where lab doesn't confirm if it's received. It doesn't give you really an ETA of results. They are consistently late, but they don't communicate that unless you follow up. And then what you get back is just hundreds of PDFs. And so it doesn't scale. And what I realized is modern day lab needs to exist that is built specifically for brands to test and know what's in and what's not in, and then make it really easy for them to take that information and use it to honestly drive revenues by winning customers and showing them that through transparency, we have what we claim to have, and we don't have what you don't want to see in your products. And the bet was brands that opt into this level of transparency will see a lift in revenues. And on average, we're seeing, because we're doing a bunch of A/B testing, it's a 12% lift. And so what this means is, back to the incentives, brands now have an incentive to test more often and be more transparent, which has huge long tail implications on the food system. And so the first step is anytime you make something easier to buy, people tend to buy more of it.
Yeah.
And right now, buying labs is not easy for these brands, especially at scale. And so it's, all right, build a platform to eliminate those pain points. And then lab data is an incredible unit of information for compliance, for QA, QC, and then also for marketing purposes. Don't have it live in a PDF.
Yeah.
Have it live in platform and use it to power all these different work streams that make it super easy for brands to solve compliance, solve quality, and then also solve for how can I take this cost center today and actually reframe it as part of my marketing budget because of the revenues it's driving. So very much born out of frustration and need at Kettle Fire, which then resulted in Light Labs.
That's very cool. I think that customer piece, like the consumer trust, I would just feel so much more good about my purchase of anything if somebody could be transparent and say, here's the testing and here's what's in it and here's what's not.
72% of consumers would agree.
Yeah, right. It makes total sense, right?
Yeah.
But technically, brands aren't made to do it, right?
The brands,
like made to show what's in them.
Yeah. I mean, in theory, and I think this is kind of the issue, is you have your NFP, the nutrition facts panels, you have your supplement facts panels, you have certain certifications. Organic is supposed to suggest it's free of banned substances. That's not always true. A lot of brands will lean into third-party tested, but as a product, you always ship your finished goods to a lab to test for micros to make sure that your product is not going to kill or make anyone sick, which means that you're already third-party tested. And so I just think that there are so many claims that can easily be made and not necessarily substantiated or fully understood, which gives the impression of high bar of quality and testing, when in reality, it's very different.
It's like the bare minimum.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I also think that, the brands that are doing it right deserve to win.
Yeah, they do.
And so if you can make it really easy for them or give them a platform to show that they are meeting their claims, don't have what you don't want in the product, they deserve to win.
Yeah.
And then of course the markets will respond.
Yeah.
Like if you see your competitor leans into this transparency, you at a certain point in time, in my opinion, biased opinion, you're going to have to opt into the same level of transparency. Because by not doing that, it might be implied that you have what consumers don't want in their products, or you don't have what you claim to have.
Right.
So that's kind of how we are tying this together.
That's
and
cool.
Trying to make it good for business versus just being another testing lab.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like a win-win-win almost, because the consumer has more transparency, so they can build more trust. That means more profits, more positive word of mouth. I guess the only person that loses in this are the companies that aren't doing things with the highest integrity, because they'll get found out, for want of a better term.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As you were getting involved in this and you learned, like you said, some of these loopholes and ways that you can kind of game the system and stuff, what's some of the craziest or shadiest stuff you've seen where people can game the system?
I mean, you can literally claim to have creatine and have no creatine. So we tested a bunch of creatine gummies.
Excellent.
And 40% of them did not have creatine.
Wow. Zero?
Correct.
Like no creatine?
Zero.
Jeez Louise.
So I think that goes back to something I think more and more consumers are becoming aware of, is the lack of regulations.
Right.
Especially in supplements.
Yeah.
And you can, I mean, as we're seeing, almost say whatever you want.
Right. It's like the Wild West, right?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now, so with that, as more consumers become aware of this now, if they want a creatine gummy, they are going to look for a brand that says, we can show you confidently that we are putting what we say in the product.
It's ask for certificate of analysis, which shows all the tests that were run and the results. Or again, the hope is, Light Labs makes it super easy to connect lab data to your product pages that you don't have to do anything, and it's automatically pushed, showing what you tested for, how you performed. But yeah, I think more and more consumers are just going to start asking for COAs.
It makes sense.
Show us.
Yeah, it makes total sense. If I'm dropping $50, $80 a
cheap.
month on something, at
Exactly.
least let me have the confidence that I'm putting the stuff in my body that the company is saying.
Correct.
Yeah.
And I think it's unfair for the brands that are adding creatine, right? It's not cheap. Like, these products are priced at a certain price point for a reason. And so if someone comes in the market with, $10, $15 less of an option, and that's what's winning the consumers, but There's no creatine. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, we're very bullish.
Wow. They're like, wow, these gummies are so much cheaper. And it's like, yes, you're
Correct.
But now just eating a very overpriced gummy because it doesn't have the active ingredient in it.
Exactly.
Pretty crazy. When you think about, I think from a consumer standpoint, it makes a lot of sense that I want to see what I'm going for is in the product. That one's pretty obvious.
Yep.
What do you see from trends of consumers looking for? You said what's not in the product, and things like, is this microplastics, heavy metals, like random stuff that just shouldn't be there? Like what's most palpable and motivating for the consumer to want to see they're avoiding?
Yeah, so we're kind of seeing, I'd say, 6 main ones, which would be heavy metals, pesticides, glyphosate, phthalates, which are your plasticizers, BPA, BPS, and then like mycotoxins and microplastics for sure are the 7. I said 6, but realizing it's 7. So I would say those are what brands really want to test and understand how they compare relative to 1, existing regulations.
Yeah.
2, most of them will actually test the competitors. And so that way they know how they fare relative to competition. And then 3, some brands are taking, I think wisely, the proactive approach of, specifically for heavy metals, they're almost in everything.
Yeah.
If you consume whole foods,
yeah,
you're consuming some level of heavy metals. Like for example, you couldn't make a healthier baby food puree at home that has less heavy metals than what you would find on shelf. It's because you're just using real ingredients.
Yeah.
And so a lot of brands are beginning to test commonly known items like an apple, 2 cups of spinach, and then you just benchmark against a very familiar product. Because I think lab results in isolation or in a vacuum can be used to fearmonger.
Of course, yeah.
And so being able to add that level of context, whether it's, here are some existing regulatory thresholds, which it's another conversation of whether or not those are the right levels, but here are some thresholds, pass, fail. Here's how we compare against the competitive set. Or here are our results compared to 2 cups of organic spinach.
Yeah. Well, it's super interesting, right? Because I think you're dead on. The more I've learned about just how kind of toxified the world is, there's no escaping. There's nobody on Earth right now, maybe some monk in the Himalayas somewhere that's got 0 microplastics, but even probably not him. But
unfortunately not.
No, like they're everywhere. Heavy metals, the rain, the soils, like AG1 tested positive for lead. Like you can't, they're every which way you go, you're somewhat screwed, but having levels and comparisons against other options is
right.
Powerful.
And it's not necessarily a problem solved by ethics or money, which is where it gets really difficult. Because you would assume that if it's a big enough problem, you can throw enough money at it and you can solve it. Or if you care deeply enough about the problem, there's a solution. And I think the unfortunate reality is it's not always the case. And so I think over time, it's going to be closer to, the initiative is closer to 0 versus having 0. And it's just minimizing your exposure to these toxins and contaminants.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very, very important that I think the whole, the cultural moment we've been in for a while and this hope that we can make America healthy again and make the world great again. These are really positive sentiments and I hope we can do it. But sometimes it feels like we were talking off just the average human walking around, they say, is breathing in a credit card sized amount of microplastics every week. And the waters you can have in your home, your reverse osmosis remineralize, and that's great, but it's just like, man, every which way we look, it's just there's toxins and there's poisons, and that's another nod for trying to be as healthy as you can be, because there's kind of no escaping a lot of this stuff. You can minimize it with testing, but you've got to also build resilience, right? For sure.
And I also think this just comes back to the contextualization of lab results. You don't want to penalize transparency, where if you're a brand, you inevitably have something of X. You go out, you are very transparent with your customers. It kind of can become a slippery slope if you don't add that layer of context, where consumers then don't buy yours and they buy another competitor because they assume that maybe the competitor has 0, when in reality it can be 5, 10x more. Exactly.
Right.
So I do think that's why it's incredibly important to invest a lot of time and thought into how lab results are communicated and shared with consumers, because you don't want it to be used for the wrong reasons.
Yeah, I could totally see that. Where do you see, because we mentioned in particular supplements are a bit of the wild, wild west, where do you see the future of testing and potentially regulations? I think that's one of the fears that I've heard. I'm not super deep into the political sphere much, but I think there is a fear that, you know, RFK and MAHA is going to remove all supplement testing. It's going to be the wild, wild west again. But I think what you're saying is hopefully we have enough impetus to do more of this and provide more clarity.
Could not agree more. And I think, you know, over time, if I were to make a bet, I think these platforms, being the e-com retailers, the actual retailers, they respond well to consumer demands. And I believe, I mean, CVS did this with their supplements. I think it's called tested to be trusted, where you actually have to test everything on your supplements fact panel, prove that you have within an appropriate percentage or margin, you have what you claim to have, and then you don't have above certain thresholds for heavy metals, you don't have any pesticides. I think it's 186 is what they list, and there's one or two others. And if you sell a supplement in CVS, you are required to go through this testing and then share those results with the buyer before you can even get on shelf. And so I think that I'm more bullish on the platforms reacting to the consumer demand than waiting for any regulations at the federal or state level. I mean, look, in 2018, there was a case of lead poisoning in applesauce. And it took 3 years for Congress to get pulled together and then opine on what regulation might look like. And then the state of California, after, you know, a couple of years, said they're actually going to come in, implement something called AB 899, requires you to test every lot for heavy metals, and you have to make those results transparent through your website and through a QR code that anyone can scan. California, of course, it's effectively a nation state law, which I'm very for. And so it's just the insanity of that delay of 2018 to here we are in 2025, especially when it comes to the most sensitive population, like babies.
Yep.
It's insane. And so I have more faith in platforms responding to consumer demands, and actually states taking a more proactive approach here, less so federal regulations. But I do think more and more retailers, more and more like e-com platforms will adopt some level of testing requirements. I mean, you see this with Amazon and it's really for durable goods, but you can now sue them for defective goods. And so I do believe that the onus and responsibility will be moved onto the platforms at some point in time, where you have to ensure that what's being sold through there is not just shit. Yeah.
Well, it seems good too that there is going to be some kind of like healthy peer pressure, I guess, from the platforms that if more people do it, you're not going to be the last one not doing it. Everybody has to respond eventually, right? So it's like a self-fulfilling positive prophecy.
Yeah.
Do you see this branching over much? I mean, we've centered largely on testing supplements. Like, what's the testing of food in general? Or that, you know, does that world get crazy?
Minimal. It's really more on the like food safety side of things. Prop 65, which is, again, California regulations where you have to test below certain thresholds. And if you don't, then you have to include some sort of warning language. I would say that's probably the closest that we have to just some sort of stick when it comes to testing food items. So again, I just think this is why it's so important that the tailwind is consumers demanding greater transparency, and then you just have to tie back an incentive showing why it benefits you, the brand, and your business to be transparent.
Have you ever seen, and certainly don't have to name names, but have you ever got a supplement of some sort, tested it, and just been like, yikes, and had to relay that back to the brand, and they're like, yikes?
And once again, I don't think, sometimes it's truly, the bar for launching a brand is fairly low. Where manufacturers have, you know, minimum order quantities that you need to buy in order to do a production run. Outside of that, there's nothing really stopping you from starting a brand and selling products. And so I don't buy into this idea that people are intentionally doing this. I think it's just been maybe an unknown for a period of time. And now it's beginning to shift a little bit, and people are beginning to understand how careful you need to be, how much you need to actually underwrite your supply chain in order to ensure that your products are free and clear of things that you don't want. So I don't chalk it up to neglect. I don't chalk it up to most brands doing this intentionally. testing at large scale can be expensive. Small scale, I actually don't think there's an excuse to not test.
Yeah.
There is a certain amount of responsibility that you actually do have as a founder. If you're selling it, you should test and ensure. But, we've received results where when we shared it with the brand, their first response is, we want to test all of our products. We want to do it over, 5-6 production runs, isolate the problem, and then we're actually going to go and solve for it.
Fix it.
Correct.
Yeah.
And so I have a tremendous amount of respect for the brands that react that way versus just kind of shelving it until they get caught.
Yeah, that's true. And I think you're right. I think overwhelmingly, so I had to put a number on it, but for the most part, most people that launch a brand and start a product is because they genuinely care and they want to help and they think it's beneficial. So they're not like, just out. And there's always going to be maybe a Chinese creatine gummy that's like, let's just sell them Haribo with no creatine and see if we can make a quick buck. But for the most part, people are generally good. They want to help.
I mean, even us at Kettle Fire early on, like we grass-fed, grass-finished, source organic ingredients. So we assumed we were free of like banned substances.
Right.
But we didn't really start testing until 2018 to prove that's true. And it wasn't out of neglect. I think it was just out of us not really knowing. Yeah. I think you put a lot of trust in the system.
Of course, yeah.
And when you realize the system
is also fragile,
broken,
right? Yeah.
Then you realize that you have to take a little bit more of a proactive measure to ensure that you're free and clear.
Yeah. It's cool. And I appreciate it, man. I think it's, like I said, it's very important, and it's something we're going to run this back at some point in the future to talk about everything that we're doing here, you know, and like what we find against other industry standards and these benchmarks, and hopefully like basically almost even building those benchmarks, because not many people are doing it, right?
Correct.
So that's how you establish it, and that's how the rising tide lifts all boats,
Exactly.
And then the ones that don't want to get involved, you might be like, oh, okay, well, why what are you hiding over there?
Exactly. I mean, our goal, and I think this is the exciting thing about starting a lab with a mission being just increased transparency in the food system, is like we want to test an entire grocery store for all these contaminants, all these actives. And then what you can do is you can just serve that data as benchmarking to these brands so that they can immediately contextualize and understand how are they performing relative to competitors in category. So that's kind of the exciting mission over the next year, is just test an entire grocery store.
Cool.
So that we have that data set, and then we can unlock it. And that way, you don't have to, it's why I respect what Heart and Soil is doing so much. Is you don't have to rely on like a category leading brand to take the initiative. Like we can just take that initiative and then pass along the learnings to all of our customers.
Yeah. So the vision's awesome. How do you, as a person, Nick, keep yourself in tip-top shape to execute on it? Because it sounds like you've probably got plenty of problems to solve and a lot to do. So what are some of your like radical health practices? What's
funny is I don't have any radical practices. They are all very basic. I think I'm my own worst enemy in the way of I want to do something radical, pretty good about it for 2 weeks, and then you just default back into old habits. And so for me, it's just building unbreakable habits. And so that looks like, obviously, go to bed around 9, wake up around 6, work out. And then from there, it's just, walk around outside for 15, 20 minutes. Workouts typically in a gym, starting to do more running. My cardio has been a 2 out of 10. I'm going to get that closer to.
Hey, running's having its moment right now.
I know.
You're going to be a hybrid athlete in no time.
Look, I'm doing a high rocks in
there
November.
You go.
So this is what I'm training for.
You need the shades and the sunnies. And you're good. You're sold.
There's a personality I have to buy into at this moment.
That's it. You got to go full send.
Correct. Yep. So I think for me, it's just the basics, which is eat clean, work out every day, get movement every single day. And honestly, that's it. My supplement stack, and I'm not just saying this because I'm on the podcast, I despise liver. I've tried to consume it every which way. I've never found a way that I enjoy.
Nope.
So I take the pills, creatine, whey protein. That's it.
Boom.
Exactly. That, and then just eating whole foods. I just cook for 4 days at a time, and then that's really it. Yeah, dude. Well,
it's not sexy. It's not super like 11-step master your morning routine, but it's going to get 95% of people 95% of the way there.
Yeah. There's things I love to do. Like, I'm horrible at meditating. I think that has tremendous benefits. Don't do it. Don't journal. I look at my phone past 8 p.m., which I try not to do. Typically working till like 9:30, not with a red screen. So there's a lot of things that I know I could be doing better, but to be honest, I'm very happy with the current baseline. And, I just do think that at a certain point, there's trade-offs that you're making. And I think having a healthy 95% baseline is great. And the trade-off I'm willing to make is not optimizing for the 99%.
You got to ask, is it worth, like, to get yourself to 90% is awesome and it will take care of almost everything. You've got to ask yourself, is it really worth the effort to go from 90 to 100 and all the extra other things that you've got to do? And for some people, and depending on what they're going for, it might be worth it.
Agreed.
For other people, you have to ask, just like, if you're going to pick something up, you got to put something down. And I think, and I can speak to this because I've been there, there is very real unhealthy obsession with health.
Yes.
You can become orthorexic, you can become micromanaging over every moment of your day. You can become stuck in this productivity purgatory where it's never good enough because it wasn't to the level of Andrew Huberman, and oh my God, I saw some blue light after 9 p.m.
Correct.
And the older I get, the more I think that the single biggest health hack is just chilling out a bit.
Yeah. Just
fucking relax a little bit, you know? And that doesn't mean descend into chaos and eat McDonald's every day, but it means like give yourself a little bit of grace. Manage stress and understand a lot of stress is also how you perceive it. Mm-hmm. So also manage your perception of that stress and understand that, things are hard and it's weird being a modern human, but a lot of stress is also perception, and it's an awesome life and you still have a lot to be grateful for. And I just think, that message of stack the big rocks and don't major in the minors, you know?
Exactly. So the radical take is I don't have a radical take.
There you go. I like it. Way to stay radical, dude. Well, do you have any kind of social media presence yourself, or are you just behind the brand?
So I actually LinkedIn, if we count that. But I've never had Instagram. Don't have Twitter, X.
Good for you.
I've never been on social media, and there was a certain point in time where it's like, okay, maybe I should join, but I was so late to the scene. I was like, don't really want to go through the process of doing this, so I just never did. So when I announced the launch of Light Labs, that was the first social media post I've done in my life, and that was 4 weeks ago.
Oh, right. On. New to the game. Let's go. Light Labs on Instagram. Has it got an interesting username or anything?
Just at Light Labs.
At Light Labs and at Kettle Fire, obviously.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Got a website to send people to?
lightlabs.com. All the vowels in there. There's no startup, missing vowels. We have all of them.
Perfect. All right, man. Well, thank you. This was really interesting, and I'm excited to see what we learn and continue to learn, and we'll have you back on, and we'll deep dive it again.
Can't wait.
Thanks for coming out, Nick. You lot, stay radical. Go sip on some bone broth as well while you're at it, all right? And we'll see you next week. Peace. All right, friends. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Radical Health Radio. We got a fresh new podcast for you every Wednesday. If you enjoyed the show, consider liking, subscribing, reviewing, and rating us on your podcast platform. It helps to spread this message of radical health. We'll see you next week.